Hello, my dear friends. Have you ever experienced one of those moments where you didn't mean to do anything special, but somehow it turned into something people talked about for days? Well, I had one of those moments not too long ago, and even now when I think about it, I can't help but smile a little and shake my head. You see, I've lived in this little house for nearly 30 years. Same creaky porch steps, same old maple tree out front that drops its leaves like it's showing off every autumn. The neighborhood has changed over the years. People come and go, families grow, children turn into adults. But there's always been this quiet rhythm to life here. Most days are peaceful. The kind of peaceful where you can hear birds in the morning and someone mowing their lawn down the street in the afternoon. Now, I'm not the kind of person who goes around trying to surprise people. In fact, if you ask my neighbors, they'd probably say, I'm the quiet one. The lady who waters her plants in the evening and waves from the porch. But one afternoon last spring, something small happened that turned into a bit of a neighborhood story. It started on a Tuesday. I remember that clearly. Tuesdays are my baking days. I don't know when that habit started, but somehow it stuck. There's just something comforting about mixing flour and sugar while the house fills with that warm smell that reminds you of childhood kitchens. That day I was making apple cinnamon muffins. Nothing fancy, just an old recipe I've been using for years. The kind written on a yellowed index card with a little smudge of batter in the corner. As the muffins were baking, I opened the kitchen window to let some fresh air in. And you know how smells travel, especially when something sweet is in the oven. Well, before long, I could hear kids outside riding their bikes and laughing. One of them slowed down near the house and said, "Whoa! What smells so good?" I chuckled to myself. I've always believed that good food should be shared. So when the muffins were done, golden on top and still warm, I wrapped a few in napkins and stepped outside. Now across the street lives a young couple with 2 little boys. Sweet kids, always racing up and down the sidewalk like they've got somewhere very important to be. I walked over and handed the boys each a muffin. Their eyes lit up like I'd just handed them treasure. "Oh, wow," one of them said. "Mom, the muffin lady gave us snacks." Well, I laughed at that. Muffin lady. I'd never been called that before. But here's where the surprising part started. Later that evening, just before sunset, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, there stood their mother, holding a small plate of chocolate chip cookies. She smiled and said, "The boys insisted we bring you something back." We chatted for a few minutes on the porch. Just simple conversation about the weather, the kids, the garden starting to grow. After she left, I remember thinking how nice that small moment was. Just neighbors being neighbors. But the next day, something unexpected happened. Around mid-morning, I heard another knock. This time, it was Mr. Henderson from 2 houses down. Now he's a quiet fellow, retired, always working in his garage. He stood there, holding a small bag of fresh tomatoes from his garden. He cleared his throat and said, "I heard you were giving out muffins yesterday." I blinked a little and laughed. Word travels fast in neighborhoods, I suppose. "I didn't realize it was an official event," I told him. He chuckled and handed me the tomatoes anyway. "Well," he said, "figured I'd contribute." By the end of that week, something curious had happened. People started stopping by with little things: a jar of homemade jam, a loaf of bread, a handful of lemons from someone's tree. And every time someone came by, they'd say something like, "I heard about the muffins." Now I have to tell you, I never planned any of this. I wasn't hosting anything. I was just baking on a Tuesday like I always do. But somehow that one small gesture had started a little chain reaction. The real turning point came that Saturday afternoon. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of tea when I noticed a few neighbors gathering near the sidewalk. Someone had brought a folding table. Another person showed up with a pitcher of lemonade. Before I knew it, there were maybe 10 people standing around chatting, laughing, sharing food. It wasn't loud or fancy. No decorations, no invitations, just neighbors. And as I sat there watching everyone talk and smile, I felt this quiet warmth settle in my chest. The kind of feeling that sneaks up on you when something simple turns out to mean more than you expected. One of the kids ran up to me and said, "Miss Mabel, are you making muffins again next week?" I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my tea. "Maybe I will," I told him. Because the truth is, sometimes we think big things are what bring people together. Big events, big plans, big efforts. But that week reminded me that sometimes it only takes a small thing: a warm muffin, a kind gesture, a moment of sharing. Something simple that says, "Hey, I see you. You're my neighbor." And somehow, without meaning to, that little Tuesday baking day turned into something that brought a few people a little closer. Even now, months later, the kids still wave and call me the Muffin Lady when they ride past. And every Tuesday, well, I still bake. So I guess the lesson here is this: you never really know how far a small act of kindness might travel. Sometimes the simplest things create the most beautiful surprises. And I'd love to know, have you ever had a moment like that? Something small you did that unexpectedly brightened someone else's day? If you have, tell me about it down in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories mean a lot to me. And if you enjoy sitting here on the porch with me and listening to these little life stories, don't forget to subscribe and come back for the next tale. Until next time, my dear YouTube family, Take care of yourselves, and maybe bake something nice for a neighbor. You never know what might happen.